And
hey, football head, back again, live coming at you on a Wednesday night on the eve of week 11 now in fantasy football. This is your commissioner, Tim Dowling of the Homies Fantasy Football League, and joined by Vice Commissioner, Mr. Alex Amac McCauley.
Thanks for having me back. Thanks for lighting the fire under our Minister of Media, producer Max, and getting us back on the airwaves, back live 2 weeks in a row. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been the vision of the podcast, I think, for a long time, is to do some visual component and definitely to have it live. And would love our Minister of Media to post this in our fantasy football group chat. If he is listening right now, that'd be great. Post the link in our group chat. Post it on Instagram or Facebook.
I've taken care of the IG. The IG is covered.
Okay,
we're good on there.
Oh yeah, people are the millions are filtering in now.
Pouring in. Stream's gonna crash any minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was another eventful week 10. In some cases, extreme cases, I'm sure there's been eliminations and clinching of playoff berths, but for the most part, I think, at least in our league, everyone is still alive. And so it's anybody's game still, nothing's set in stone. And I didn't have a lot of time to do a whole write-up on the power rankings again this week. As y'all saw, I was only able to just reorder, shake things up a little bit. But I did find a quick quote.
Okay. Can I just say something sort of about week 10? And I feel like most fantasy football leagues have this week. It might not always be week 10, but it's kind of, and maybe your quote's going to get into this, so I don't want to step on your toes here, but I feel like this, at least in our league, was it was like the great tightening. Like, no one got eliminated, but some teams that were supposed to win lost. Some teams that were supposed to lose won. And for that, now, like you said, the parity has only grown, and it really makes for an exciting stretch run these next 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's I think I had said a couple weeks back, like, forget what the quote was, but eventually the numbers don't lie, and we're starting to see that. So even if there's ultimately fantasy football is, has a big element of chance and luck and is gambling. So eventually the casino will win. Eventually the odds will play out, and that's what's happened this week. So I'll just start with my quote for power rankings this week was, if you can't get it all unless you give it your all. And this is me kind of calling out maybe some God, sorry, the voice of God just queued up as we get in, or that sounds actually like the voice of the guy from Power Rangers.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah. It's me. I am the voice of God.
And the voice of the guy from Power Rangers too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Power Rangers.
Power Rangers. Yeah, just make sure you take a beat, Hey, here we go. Power rankings intro.
Yeah, we're learning on the fly.
I'm coaching these guys how to be on
what
air.
A live show is like.
Max has never understood a script better in his life than he does right now. So he's on these beats.
Cool. So now I know next time the cue is power rankings. I'll take a beat. You'll play the audio clip that honestly sounds pretty shitty. We'll work on that quality as well. And then we'll go right into it. So the quote this week was, you can't get it all unless you give it your all. And this is just speaking to the managers out there that maybe are ready to give up, or maybe they feel content with where they're at. And fantasy football is a 3-month, 4-month season where week to week, you got to check the waiver wires. You got to check your lineup. You got to pay attention to detail. That's all I'm saying. There's no foot off the gas. All right. There's no pumping the brakes. We got to keep going. This is the home stretch, essentially. Unfortunately, that doesn't always play out. As we see back in the 12th spot, a Chunderella story, losing a heartbreaker to yours truly on Monday night by 1 point. What a shitty Monday night game between the Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos. And I don't know if there's a worse position to have going on Monday night that you're holding on to than a defense or special teams because of all the fluctuations, starting with 10 points and just slowly ticking down as the game goes on. But Chun couldn't hold on. He loses by 1, and I dropped him right back into the 12th spot at 2-8. So he's now guaranteed a losing record. And I hate to be the Scar to his Mufasa and throw him. What am I joking? I love being the Scar to his Mufasa and throwing him back into the Stampede. He's escaped the skunk for many years now, and I'm doing my part to make it as hard as possible for him to escape again. Number 11th seed, first time in the 11th spot, My Little Tony, Keffler's squad. He's 4-6. Not the second worst record, but he has just really struggled this year. I don't see his team with enough firepower of winning. He only, I don't think he broke 100, or he did break 100, 101. He also lost a close one on Monday night. So the two losers on Monday night, I hate to do it to you, but you had the heartbreak on Monday. You're going to fall down on the power rankings as well. And then jumping up to the 10th spot with a new name change, the Crystal Lake Crushers, which is you're shaking your head, Alex. You don't like this name? This is formerly Justin Jefferson. What the hell was the first team name? And then it was Kirk Thuggins. It's Derek and Max's team. Max, do you have any?
I'm shaking my head because now we're bringing in Silver Screen. We're cross pollinating the podcast here, and we have.
I think that was Derek's whole motivation in joining the league, was to promote his podcast.
Well, now we have the Crystal Lake Crushers. So apparently Jason Voorhees got scooped up off of waivers, or is maybe the third co-manager to this team now because, of course, Camp Crystal Lake, Friday the 13th movies. Yeah, they've infiltrated. The Silver Screams podcast has infiltrated the Homies Fantasy Football League officially with this name change.
I'm a fan of it. I'm honestly not a big fan of these hitch your wagon to a player names.
Well, I mean, look at My Little Tony. We have. I mean, we're built different, but My Little Tony, it's funny because multiple, we're defending champs multiple times over. Anyways, I digress. My Little Tony, going back to Keffler's team, the Cowboys, they scored 37 points last week. You would think that they're icing the clock. They're running the ball. I think Tony Pollard had 11 points, maybe not even double digits. So yeah, it's tough when you have a first round draft pick, you name your team after them, whether or not they get hurt or they're just underperforming or they're not that consistent force in your lineup, then all of a sudden it does you feel a little silly having them attached to the namesake. So yeah, maybe just going out into left field, pulling from another podcast.
This is all distracting or a little bit from, I like the name change, and I'm moving them up 10. They got the win, had a huge week. Don't want to distract from that, but they did score the most points in the league this last week, 162 and 36 points. They have totally revamped their lineup with Dak Prescott. Gibbs is in there. They've spent all their fab budget. And they got a huge win. So I'm going to bump them up to 12. They're still 3-7, but man, congrats to at least a successful week for them. I know it feels good when you're at the bottom of the barrel and you post a week like this. It gives you faith.
Producer Max, are you still there?
Yeah, it looks like we lost Kamish.
Looks like we
Man,
lost Kamish. So,
you
damn.
think he would be able to fucking afford some internet? The guy talks so much shit. Oh my god!
Okay.
All right, let's carry this one.
Let's go. All right. So, anything else you guys want to say, or that you want to say in part for your team when it comes to the name change?
Listen, man, we're zombies. We're rising from the dead. So here comes the Camp Crystal or Lake Crushers. I don't know. Listen, Derek has control of that, and I love it, and I support it.
Can we get some of these comments from the chat up on the screen? Because these are good. These are good. All right, welcome back, Kamish.
Yeah, I don't know, internet shit out for a second. My bad.
Did you rub some tinfoil together, get your internet back up and running?
I think
I
it's
don't know
that.
What happened. I gotta make a call to Comcast.
It's that hunk of metal behind you, blocking the signal.
Oh, this whole thing?
Oh, that old thing.
This
yeah.
bright new shiny thing? Yeah. Okay, how's my quality now? I'm having trouble hearing Max, to be honest, but
you're like a 3-17. You're like a 3. You're a couple games under 500 with this quality.
My quality? Okay. Looks fine on my end.
Okay. I guess that's all that matters.
Okay. We'll move on to the number 9 team. A big drop. Lamar and Dangerous. This is Loose Squad. They only scored 95 points this last week. Again, another name that hitched their wagon to Lamar Jackson, them and the Ravens are having a good year, but Lamar's like not having the fantasy season that you would have expected, especially with this kind of success from the Ravens. So dropping from 5 to 9, he's 5-5. I got a 4-6 team above him because the 4-6 team just beat him. There's some big swoops going on here. I don't know what you think about this drop from 5 to 9. How you feeling about Lou's team currently? He's obviously very much in the playoff hunt, very alive. 9
of course. And I play him this week, and his lineup, I mean, like most fantasy lineups, it's matchup dependent, and I think his matchups look pretty solid this week. But it is just tough when you have Lamar Jackson, who is, he's always going to be a top 5, top 7 ranked quarterback going into the week. So you're never not going to start him. And yet you already mentioned it. The Ravens, who have the number 1 scoring defense in the league, they got another pick 6 for a score last week. They have one of the best running games in the league that right now is giving value to 2 running backs per week, sometimes even 3 if you're in a deep league and you have to play Justice Hill. And so I don't know really where that leaves Lamar. He's always going to give upside with his legs, but it's not like Zay Flowers or Odell Beckham Jr. are reliable fantasy starters. No one outside of Mark Andrews at the skill positions that, not including the backfield, you don't feel comfortable playing any of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always been like, who's going to emerge as the Ravens wide receiver 1? And last year was like
Rashad Bateman
at the high.
Yeah.
This year, like Zay Flowers, and we saw Zay Flowers have some good involvement earlier in the year, but that's dropped off. Then we've got this resurgence of Odell, but has Lamar ever had? I mean, Hollywood Brown was about as consistent of a receiver that we've seen him have, but even that was kind of a boomer bust type of receiver. So I just don't think it's in the card for the Ravens offense. It's not a pass first offense. You can't really rely on a consistent wide receiver. So anyhow, that's why I bumped Lou down. He's lost a couple games. Have him at the 9 spot. I'm sure he'll bump back up. At the 8 spot, one above him who just beat him on another close one again on Monday night is K9 unit. This would be Matt Legg. He's 4-6. Yeah, you lost some heartbreakers a couple weeks ago, but Justin Herbert pops off with 28 points. We see Ken Walker, and then is it not Javonte? Is it Javonte Williams or Javale?
Yes. No, Javonte Williams. Yep.
What's his name?
Javonte.
Yeah, also has 19 points as well. Sorry if I'm – so I like the ceiling on Matt's team, but I'm keeping him at the 8 spot just because he wanted me to get to move up. I do move up Colin's team. He's 6-4. Colin's gonna flirt with the 6 seed. I think he puts up 162 points, also a season or a weekly high for the squad. Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then surprisingly, Geno Smith has a good game, at least fantasy wise. So that's what gets him at the high point total. And we know this about Colin's team. We know that he's got great wide receivers that can put up 50 points between the two of them, even without Devontae Adams having a great year. My issue with Colin's team is the consistency and the depth. So I'm not going to overreact and throw him back into the playoff hunt just because he has this 1 week. Next down the list, now we're moving into my top 6. I'm keeping who was Tank Bigsby right where he was at the 6th seed. He gets a clutch win on Monday night. Tank Dell leading the way for his team again, 16.9 points. Olaquan has been maybe the defensive player, fantasy football defensive player of the year, IDP of the year. He's in second. And then Dalton Kincaid ends up getting him the win on Monday night with a score there. So big win for Blaine. He's now won 3 in a row. He was 3-4. Now he's 6-4. I had him top of the power rankings earlier in the year. He's climbing back up. Very exciting. Now in the 5th seed, dropping 2 spots from the 3rd, Bobby 5-5 on a bit of a slide, and I see him in the chat. Would love to get Bobby on here if he's available, or at least tell me something in the comments about how you're feeling about your team and about your slide in the power rankings, because even with Christian McCaffrey and Tua, I see you make some moves, but not maybe the number 1, number 2 team we had thought you were early on. You're 5-5 now. I mean, you could be out in the playoffs, and who knows? You wind up in the skunk. You never know. So you got to give it your all.
I mean, if the playoffs started today, Bobby is lower than Camille of the 5-5 teams in the 7th seed. So he's on the outside looking in right now.
So he's on the outside looking in. Bobby, drop a comment, like and subscribe. Kept you right at the 4 there, VP Commish. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it was a tough week. I think we both picked me to win last week, and I felt pretty good going into the Sunday games, even though Adam Thielen didn't have the performance that I would have liked for him to have on Thursday night. But then it was just really tough because as soon as the game started on on Sunday, Alexander Mattinson goes out with a concussion and Michael Thomas does something to his leg. And so I had 2 starters just out like almost immediately. And so that was really tough. And then almost it became one of those weeks where I'm like, okay, well, this has always been my mantra is if I'm going to lose big, don't waste one of these like 125 type weeks. And you just get bad luck and matched up against somebody that scores 130 and you kind of piss away a good performance. And so when Brian Robinson started popping off in that afternoon game, I was like, oh no. And then Josh Allen might have a good game. And then I start looking at bench numbers and I'm like, Cortland Sutton gets a touchdown. Gus Edwards gets a touchdown. Romeo Doubs gets a touchdown. These guys were all on my bench and I could have played them. Ultimately, no matter how I did the math, it wouldn't have mattered just because I ran into a really good performance from Camille last week. And so it's okay. Injuries. I can adapt. And I already made some waiver moves, cut bait with some guys like Dallas Goedert, just because it was a bye week last week for the Eagles. And so I wasn't able to put him in my IR spot because they didn't have to release an injury report. So just had to cut ties with him, get a new tight end. Taysom Hill is now on bye this week. And so we're rolling with the punches, but this is why fantasy is fun. This is why being a fantasy football manager is a challenging thing at times because you can't not everyone can just set and forget their lineup. So I'm enjoying it. It's fun.
Well, this is the downfall of having a scrappy team. You're going to have lower performances. You maybe lack some depth. I think the biggest.
No, I mean, I think I have the depth. I got guys on my bench that score touchdowns, so the depth is there.
But Josh Allen's not having a great year.
He's not, but once again, I'm happy that I didn't need him to have a good game on Sunday. So one of his really poor games, like probably his worst game this year, came at a time when I didn't really need him to have a good game.
Yeah, I mean,
the glass is always half full.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen is the number one quarterback scoring wise. So I just think his turnovers hurt him. And
they do.
Yeah,
they do.
We'll see, you lost. You're still 6-4. You're in good position. So my power rankings are all crazy because again, I didn't have a lot of time to do this. I got Air Jalen moving up from number 7 all the way up to number 3 with a 5-5 record. And here's my reasoning: he's on a hot streak. He's scored more points, or second most points now, than anyone else in the league. And I think his time is due. He's got a strong tight end in Hawkinson.
Mm-hmm.
He's got David Montgomery is the real deal this year with Detroit, playing great. So he's just been able to like scrap together, borrowing a phrase here from yourself, scrap together a good lineup. So I just wanted to give Camille props because I had him at the bottom of the rankings for so long, and I know his team has overperformed from that.
We have a very special guest in the green room right now.
You want to bring him in? Yes. Oh, with the baby. What is up, dude?
Yo, hold up. What is up, boys? Dude.
Hello.
Live. I just got back home. Love the pod. Love the live stuff. It is fantastic.
Yeah.
Who are you holding in your arms there, my man?
Young Bayani.
Bayani. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Fantasy League. Your daddy's doing pretty good, sitting at a 5-5 record. But I always expect a lot more out of Bob. But bro, I know you're a busy man.
Hold up 1 second. Let's talk numbers really quick. You know what's my points for? I always put up numbers. I always lose because the team against me puts up the best numbers. Look at Max. Like, dude, that was an insane game. Like, dude, there's no way I could beat that. But
right.
You know, you got to put up 125 to beat me.
I hear you. I mean, you're
that's
right there.
Point.
As of right now,
you're in the upper half of points forward. Let's look at your points against. You are also you're in the second half. Yeah, okay. I guess your argument holds some weight.
For sure. However, I will say
5-5. So you're not stressed. You're not worried,
bro. Any given Sunday, we'll see. We'll see. I have gotten some trade offers for.
You made no trades.
No trades. I've declined all of them so far. I forgot
the trade deadline has passed, so you're stuck with what you got.
I'm totally fine with what I got, but there was some wild stuff for CMC. I was just ruffling. Hold on 1 second.
Do you mind sharing? Do you remember any?
I don't want to get too far in the details.
Of course not.
So the interesting thing about your team, Bobby, as I look at it, although Who is Tank Bigsby and Ball Hogs are both above you in the standings, you have more points scored than those two teams. And so going forward, if you can just scrap together a couple more wins, a tiebreaker, and if those two teams falter, a tiebreaker is going to go your way.
Right.
You just can't afford to lose. And not that anybody really can, but you do have that added insurance of kind of being like, I know I have points scored.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like last year.
Yes. Yeah. This is not the first time that you've had this to fall back on.
Well, since your debut season, you've been one of the more successful teams. You've been making the playoffs. You do have the one skunk on your record, but we'll just gloss right over that. And honestly, probably one of the best skunks we've ever seen, I would say as well. Because you got drunk, which was funny.
Faded.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you popping in for us, and wish you the best of luck with the remainder of the year.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And And welcome Bayani as well. All our love from the Fantasy Football League. And the baby mama, of course, Jacqueline.
Later, boys. Yep.
See ya.
Later. Nice. Awesome. Another long-standing league member there as well. So he was down at the 5th. We're talking about Camille's team. What do we think about Camille's hot streak here, as he's now won 4 in a row?
Yeah, I mean 4 in a row, and
he was 1 and 5.
After
1 and 5 to 5 and 5.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. It's a great swing. The scary thing about having just played him, what I will say about his team going forward, and to anybody who does have to match up against Camille here in the back third of the year, is that he has this unique makeup to his team where there are people like TJ Hawkinson that are just like volume monsters and target monsters, and so they're always going to have that safe floor. But then there's the guys like David Montgomery, who you don't know when and where it's going to come, but one in every 3 games for him is going to be 20 plus points. And we saw it like maybe 6 weeks ago on that Thursday night game when he had 3 touchdowns. And then we saw it this last week where he ripped off a 75-yard touchdown run. And now the Jahmyr Gibbs train has been rolling. And I feel like that's the more consistent play there out of the Detroit backfield. But Camille's going to continue to put David Montgomery out there. And as an opponent of Camille, you're going to see David Montgomery in that lineup. And you're just going to be like, shit, I hope this isn't the week that he goes off.
Yeah, and he's completed this winning streak also with 0 fab. So he's just been putting it together. He's had faith. I mean, he might be, if he makes the playoffs, I mean, manager of the year nominee. I'm saying it right now. Nominee.
Yeah.
And then the 2 spot, I didn't change it. But I did gain it a game, and now I'm tied 7-3. Commissioners and the Andy Stack are tied here. Both got 7 wins on the year. So we'll at least be 500, but something like a 95% chance for the playoffs. So I'm feeling very lucky to survive the Chun happening here this last week. And then Andy Stack taking an L this week as well. So doesn't change too much. I feel like we've spent enough time on our teams. Should we move into recent activity?
Yeah, we can go in.
It was an active week.
It really was, yeah. So the way I love to do the recent activity now is to go into the offers report and look at those, because that really details the dollar amounts and the bids that were successfully claimed and unsuccessfully claimed for players. So we're going to start with the Andy Stack spending basically half of the year's allotted budget, $49, to pick up Ty Chandler, who I'm sure probably started the year at second or third or potentially even a practice squad guy in the Vikings backfield. Well, now that Alexander Mattison and Cam Akers are both questionable going into this week, he could be the presumptive lead running back in that backfield. He scored a touchdown last week, saw a ton of volume once Mattison did go out. So he gets him for $49. Chundarella Story had an unsuccessful bid for him for $20. And now I don't know where Morgan's fab is at, if he could have gone higher, but Andrew and probably not Nick really wanted to make sure that they got their guy, and they did. So kudos to them. And then we had Jordan Love go to the Andy Stack as well for $5. I mentioned that just because it's the same team, and someone else who is Tank Bigsby, Blaine, tried to get Jordan Love back on his squad for $3. So only a $2 differential right there, and just missed out on the chance to get him. Russell Wilson had an unsuccessful claim from Tank Bigsby as well. So Blaine was obviously in the market for a quarterback this week. But Russell Wilson ended up not being selected. I'm not sure why he's on here. That must just be because Tank Bigsby ended up spending $15 to get Sam Howell instead. So Blaine, so he had 3 bids in to get different quarterbacks. Sam Howell, who, if you watch, you don't have to watch the Commanders games, but if you look at the box score, chucks the ball around the yard like none other. This guy's over 40 pass attempts every single week. And I believe he and CJ Stroud, 2 rookies, are leading the NFL in passing right now for the respective conferences, the AFC and the NFC. So that's really cool. Sam Howell, another one of these guys, kind of like Tank Dell, kind of like, some of these other like spirit animals that Blaine's had on his team this year that are just like fun guys to root for. So you like to see that. He also then gets the Dallas running back, Rico Dowell, and he spent $16 on him. I don't know if this guy saw garbage time. I know Deuce Vaughn saw some garbage time action in that game as well. Not sure if Tony Pollard picked up an injury or why Blaine felt the need to spend $16 on him. Nobody else was going after him, but he got his guy there. And then just going down to Chundarella's story, he gets Noah Brown for $1. I myself.
So I'll say, because I didn't spend a lot of time on any time on myself or Andrew's team in the power rankings, Chun gets a little bit of revenge here picking up Noah Brown from me because Chun and I made the trade last week, DK Metcalf for Najee Harris.
Yeah.
That ended up being the difference in giving me the win. Because I had a lot of bye weeks, and so I put Najee Harris in. There was a 4-point difference. I think Najee Harris scored 17. DK Metcalf scores 13. I win by 1. And then, I've totally mismanaged my fab budget. I would love to get a Houston receiver on my roster because I got CJ Stroud. So I was hoping that Noah Brown, I could swoop him in the wee early morning hours, but Chun's going to snag him for $1.
For $1.
So good for you, Chun.
Yep. Threw a flyer out and it came back. And then Ball Hogs adds the Lions defense for $1. I myself add Tyler Higbee. I think I mentioned that earlier. Finally dropped Dallas Goedert. And that is about it for the acquisitions that cost anything. Tim, you go and you add Jerry Jeudy, Denver wide receiver, of course. You add Robert Woods. A couple other people make some IDP switches here. Kenneth Gainwell gets picked back up. K. Dotton, another tight end that the Crawley Crushers or whatever this team's name is, Crystal Lake Crushers, they add. I think I play in a league that has another team named the Crawley Crushers, so that was a bit of like a Freudian fantasy football slip there. And so not much else to say about recent activity, but that was a big dollar amount for a presumed number 1 seed to spend at this point in the year.
Yeah, and Andrew's team lost, pretty decidedly last week.
Could be a bit of a knee-jerk reaction.
Times. Yes, I'm not good on the fab. I will never win the waiver wire wizard, ever. I'm not good with the fab. I'm not good with the waiver wire. I try to ride my draft and not screw it up all the way to the ship like I did last year. So suck on that. But to talk about Andrew's pickup, I think it's funny he made a little psychological move here to get Jordan Love because he's playing Blaine this week. Jordan Love was kind of Blaine's original QB for a few weeks there. He knows he's in the market for it. So even though Justin Fields is returning, that's who Andy Stack traded for, is going to be their quarterback moving forward. He still spends the money to kind of snag Jordan Love a little bit, and he's already
play a little defense
on the attack against Glow here to hopefully get a win. I do think, if he's going to spend the money on Ty Chandler, do we see him in the lineup? We don't.
He's not in the lineup right now, and it's actually funny too because these two guys, Ty Chandler and Jordan Love, both have as good a matchups as you could want from those two positions. The Vikings play the Broncos this weekend, and the Broncos have the worst run defense in the NFL, so that is a plus matchup for Chandler. And then Jordan Love is playing the Chargers at home nonetheless, so in Lambeau Field. And the Chargers have the 32nd ranked defense for opposing quarterbacks. So great matchups. If he doesn't play him, at least he knows no one can be playing them against him this week.
Yeah. Nice. Let's get into the weekly previews.
Yeah.
I think last week we talked about.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
Choosing two games to highlight this week, just to save everybody some time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first game we should look at is Lamar and Dangerous versus the Scrapularian.
Okay.
5-5 team versus a 6-4 team.
So we kind of wanted to do this where we highlight 4 teams in 2 different matchups. One is like the game of the week in the traditional sense, like we normally do it. And then another one is kind of like perhaps one of the most pivotal games of the week.
I think this is a pivotal game
for
both of you. Yeah. Because if Lou loses, he's really sweating, and I mean, it's just you guys are kind of all of a sudden you drop out of this more secure position, and you're on the bubble maybe if you're 6-5. So let's go ahead and take a look because it's going to affect the playoff picture here.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at Lamar and Dangerous, we already talked about it. The team begins and ends with Lamar, and Lamar has a home game this week, but it is on a short week. It's AFC North football. The standard is the standard, as Mike Tomlin likes to say. That's going to be a slugfest. That's what I predict, at least. And so does Lamar have a 25-point game this week? I don't foresee that happening. It doesn't mean that he can't run and make up for a lot of his, I don't want to call them deficiencies with his deep ball. They don't really, the only way they sustain drives is with the running game. And I get it. His legs are a part of that. But I do feel like I'm catching Lamar on a good week this week, just because the Ravens are playing a divisional opponent who, with a 500 record, or a record that's over 500, the Bengals are still at the bottom of that division. So they have to have a win this week.
And yeah, it's also on a Thursday, which we know are typically lower scoring affairs.
Yeah.
Then he's got also Breece Hall on the road in Buffalo. Now, Buffalo has had some really bad losses the last 2 weeks. I mean, obviously, we talked about the Monday night sneaker, and then they had lost to Cincinnati the week before. They got to get the ship right. I mean, there were some terrible blunders on special teams. So we have the Jets, in-state rival, one of them, going into Buffalo.
Another divisional game.
Still tough, but I would think that they, maybe this is one where
it maybe doesn't scare, if you're a Breece Hall owner this year, it doesn't scare you as much as it would have in like week 1 or week 2. You do probably feel a little bit better about it, but the Bills should be playing inspired football right now.
Yeah, that's my point. Maybe the psychology fails and they just simply don't have the personnel, but I think they're still a good football team. So we will see. Then he's got Rachaad White, another tough matchup on the road in San Francisco. Tampa Bay has been kind of a strange team with our favorite player, Baker Mayfield, at the
my favorite football player for the year 2023 is Baker Mayfield.
Rachaad White's been number 11 running back on the year, has been strung together the last month or so. Some great games, 20-plus carries the last 2 games.
And the targets, so many targets.
Some catches, some dump downs from Baker. So still San Francisco, that's a tough matchup, but Rachaad White is like a staple in that offense, keeps it going.
Yeah, high floor.
Then we got the Cheetah, Tyreek. There's no stopping this guy at all. Very high floor of just like 8 points has been his lowest, but he's got double-digit targets all year. I mean, and his ceiling is like 40, 30 points, and a good matchup at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. So we like Tyreek Hill this week. Mike Evans, questionable, but another Tampa Bay running back or Tampa Bay player. He's the number 9 wide receiver on the year, and what a crafty veteran he's been. That was a great draft pick value-wise. I think he slipped into the later rounds. But again, on the road in San Francisco, still he's got like the 2 staples, only people scoring points on Tampa Bay. Don't know if I like either of them this week. I think San Francisco, coming off a bye, should be healthy and well-rested and ready to stomp down Tampa Bay. I think San Francisco's got that game. Luke Musgrave, tight end has been such a weird position for Lou all year.
Yeah.
Musgrave's got, he's had a couple decent weeks, but only 4 targets the last 2 weeks, even though he's got the production out of that. I don't know what to make of Luke Musgrave. I don't know what to make of Green Bay, honestly, this year.
We did just say that, it's a very positive matchup for Jordan Love this week. And so if Love has a good game against that Chargers secondary that is struggling to shut down opposing quarterbacks, then maybe Musgrave does have a good week this week.
He could, certainly. Yeah. I mean, tight ends are kind of the safety valves there. Zay Flowers, we had talked about. This is again, tough matchup in the flex, but he is kind of probably the most promising wide receiver on Baltimore there. How about the disappointment of Micah Parsons last week? 0 points from Micah Parsons in a blowout against the Giants, against the Giants. I think we had highlighted him last week saying that he might be a difference maker. Ended up getting 0. Yeah. Makes no freaking sense to me.
Well, and it's just tough because that defense has still been really, really good this year. Now, of course, number 11 in white with the star on his helmet is going to get double teamed every single time he's coming off the edge. He's going to get running back support. Tight ends are going to chip at him. He's not performing for a reason, right? It's kind of like when a really good cornerback doesn't have a lot of stats at the end of the year. And it's like, well, yeah, because no one throws at him. He's not getting the opportunities to make these plays. But you look at Parsons' year, and I get it. You don't want to drop him and pick somebody else up because you would hate yourself if all of a sudden you drop him and then he puts together 4 straight games of like double-digit performances. But he's gone. After a 21-point week in week 2, he goes 7.5, 1.5, 2.5, 5.5, a bye, 7.5. Then there's a 13. So he does have one splash week there 2 weeks ago, and then a goose egg, as you just mentioned. So like, listen, this
is why the IDP is a polarizing position.
Yeah.
Ups and downs. Then he's got Seattle's defense, which is kind of fun that they're a playable defense in fantasy again.
Yeah.
Didn't do great against Baltimore, but 4 points against Washington. And then Buffalo's kicker, who, again, I'd probably look somewhere else for Buffalo's kicker. This is definitely a move that he could make, but he just hasn't. So, again, I know that in Loose League he's dropped to these 3 positions, so maybe he just forgot about them in ours. Those are points that make a difference. So let's lose lineup. I see he's got Cooks on the bench. He's got Nico Collins on the bench, who missed last week with an injury, but is practicing again this week. So that might be a move to get in there. Ramondre Stevenson is on a bye this week. So that's why we got Rachaad White, Zay Flowers, and Breece Hall. He's got the projection right now.
He does. And I am down 1 player. I don't have an active kicker right now. Younghoe Koo is on a bye, and I do not want to drop him. He is the 5th ranked kicker, so I'm not going to drop him. I'm going to wait and see if either Alexander Mattison or Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is on a bye, and so nothing's going to happen with his injury designation. Once again, I'm just kind of getting like screwed with the lineup lock there. But Mattison, who is projected as 0 right now, hopefully they err on the side of caution and just declare him out early this week. And then I would be able to move him into my IR spot and pick up a kicker for free without having to drop any of these folks on my bench who I don't really want to drop. They've all been productive enough. And if I have to throw them in a pinch, I do feel somewhat comfortable. So right now, we've talked about this before. The lineup kind of just is what it is. And it's fun because, somebody like Courtland Sutton, who has been the 24th ranked wide receiver on the year, and right now, including a bye week, has a 4-game touchdown streak going. It's like he's going to be in the lineup. I just kind of have no other choice than to do that. And I like my running back matchups this week. ETN and the whole Jags offense coming off a bye, they got stifled by the San Francisco defense last week. And so I feel good about his opportunities to bounce back. Brian Robinson was a man possessed against the Seahawks last week, and I feel like that was a real big breakout game for him. So excited that he gets another porous defense like the Giants to go after. We talked about how the Bills need to have a bounce back week. And then, Tyler Higbee is in there. I was looking at the available tight ends. We know historically that the Seahawks have always struggled to cover a tight end. Tyler Higbee should get Matt Stafford back under center this week. And so Stafford knows how to exploit, a defense's weaknesses. And so I feel good about that. Pittsburgh and Cleveland should play, and that should be a real low scoring game. It's kind of fun that all 4 AFC North teams play each other this week. So I'm looking for the Pittsburgh defense to play well this week. And then, once I get a kicker in there, I'll feel fine. I do think that this game is very pivotal. I don't think that there's going to be a blowout one way or another. This honestly could be like, I know Lou's projected up over 110 points. I'm right around 100 without a kicker in my lineup. I feel like this could be a race to like 104.
Yeah. I think looking at it on paper, you see maybe some bigger names or more recognizable names on Lou's side, and even the projections, even without your kicker, are still swinging his way. But then if you dig a little deeper and you look at the matchups, and you can see Carolina's not very good. Maybe Dallas beats up on him. Thielen gets his garbage time.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start to figure out the formula, and you see how your teams may not be looking that flashy, but then end up winning the game week to week.
I mean,
so
it is funny. One of these teams has to win, and it's going to come ugly, but a win's a win.
Yeah.
I've had better luck, I feel like, this year. And now this is just, fantasy karma, fantasy juju, whatever. But I've had better luck, I feel like, when I've picked against myself. So I'll go ahead and pick Lewis this week to win.
Really? Okay. Well, I'm going to pick you, even though it's
Thanks.
against better judgment. Nice. So that'll bring us to game
of week.
Nice. You got the music. I like it. Well, I almost wanted to choose Andy Stack and Tank Bigsby. And that seems like it could be huge if Tank Bigsby wins 7-4 and the 7-4. I mean, that'd be a big shakeup at the top. But I'd rather stay on the bubble. I'd rather stay on the fringe. And I'd rather look at My Little Tony and Damn It Bobby as the game of the week.
Let's do it. Yeah, this team, both these teams, historically, real good, real savvy managers in Jordan and Bobby. And when you look at how they've done it this year, they've done it the way the Scrappa. Like, there are not a lot of, outside of Christian McCaffrey, outside of both of their running backs, really, because My Little Tony does have the namesake Tony Pollard, who, despite his ups and downs, is still a startable running back. He's certainly not where you wanted him to be based on his ADP, but these guys, and now that, Tony has Kyler Murray back, he gets to start playing around with him a little bit. Now that Bobby's got the Dolphins off a bye, he can kind of play the matchups between Baker and Tua. So I imagine Tua is going to end up back in the lineup this week over Baker. But these guys have flexibility, they have depth, and they're both pretty healthy for this time of the year. T. Higgins looks like he's already been ruled out of that Baltimore game on Thursday night. So Bobby won't have him this week, but he still has DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Hollywood-Brown, and Chris Godwin for that stack there with Baker if he decides to keep it. So they have options. They have been known to put up big weeks. They've also been known to scrap out wins. So this should be good. This should be a good one.
Yeah, I think Bobby's going to end up putting Cleveland in there instead of New England, obviously. I think he's probably going to roll out Tua over Baker as well. That'd definitely be the smart move as Miami's playing Las Vegas. And then on the other side, I could see, My Little Tony going with Kyler Murray over Jared Goff as well. But that one's not quite as necessary because Arizona going into Houston, and we know Houston's on a roll coming off 2 back-to-back clutch wins. You almost would rather keep Goff in this week, I think, at home against Chicago.
Yeah, I think that's probably the sound play. I mean, Goff has a safer floor. I feel like Murray, if he feels like he needs a home run, he might be able to go for him because Kyler actually looked pretty good in his first game back. Kind of back end, tight end 1 type numbers, 18 points with a rushing score as well. So he looks to be healthy, but Goff against in a divisional game, lots of divisional games this week, it seems like, but Goff at home on that fast track indoors when he can get the Sam Laporta stack going. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is coming off his career high in receiving yards last week. So I think it's the right play to keep Goff in there.
Yeah, especially on Bobby's side, he's got Hollywood Brown, which we always kind of don't like when our quarterback is thrown to the other team. I don't know how much that really matters, but if you've got Goff and Laporta, that's maybe who you want to stick with.
Yeah.
So this is, again, I'm happy that I didn't pick the obvious choice and I went with this one, kind of highlighting some teams that have been sliding a little bit. Here's a chance in week 11 to establish some momentum, and this is the time you want to start stringing together wins into the playoffs here. And both are certainly alive. I mean, Kefler being 4-6, not out of it by any means.
Right.
And it could start here. So I think the X factor, though, and this is why I've kept Bobby's team so high in the power rankings all year, CMC.
Yeah, CMC. And he actually did not. It's funny because, it seems like this happens all the time in sports where some sort of streak gets broken. And then the following week, once that player's gone like just past the precipice, they will all of a sudden not be able to do that thing that they just set the record for. So McCaffrey has this consecutive touchdown streak for every single game that he's played as a Niner. He breaks it. They go on bye, and then they come back this past week. So it was a great game, 17.2 fantasy points, but no touchdown. So I expect to see McCaffrey get back into the end zone this week. And then also TJ Watt. I know that the Browns offensive line is good, but Deshaun Watson is once again, I think, questionable for this week. And so I already talked about how I feel good about the Steelers defense as a whole this week in my lineup. I think TJ Watt, who is still the number one ranked edge rusher, D end edge rusher in fantasy football, and hasn't really had his big splash weeks like he had to begin the year, I think could have a multiple sack game this week.
So those are the X factors on Bobby's side, but on Kefler's side, I mean, I think the difference for him is he's got safer floors coming out of Garrett Wilson, Deebo Samuel, and Laporta, and even Amari Cooper compared to what Bobby's got with DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Evan Ingram, and Godwin. I think that stack and that meat right in the middle of the lineup there,
it looks good.
Could give Kefler an edge because
Pollard has a good matchup against the Panthers this week too.
And a good matchup for Dallas. So I'm gonna go with Kefler.
Yeah.
To get back on the winning streak and take the win this week and stay alive for this year.
It's tough. As much as I want to give Bobby some love after he came on, shared his beautiful baby boy with the league and the internet. It's tough because I think my little Tony, he stays afloat. He's keeping his head above water.
Awesome. So we're both on.
What's tough?
On My Little Tony. Be Kefler.
We're both on My Little Tony, and now it's tough because we probably should have done this in my matchup. I'm not really sure if there was an opportunity. Maybe there was there. I guess. Let's see. Can I go back and look at this? Yeah,
we're doing things out of order.
We are, but let's go
because
back
we
and
have
talk
about the Seahawks, right?
Yeah. So Tyler Higbee, he's in my lineup this week as a free agent acquisition, and he's going against the Seahawks. Oh, wait a minute.
Finish it off with Hawk Talk.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So the Seahawks get back in the win column this week. They beat the Commanders on a last-second field goal at home. And honestly, a closer game than I liked to see. It's still, to me, this team does not look like the big Super Bowl contender that a lot of the experts were saying earlier in this year. And it's such a different tune I'm singing compared to last year about the Hawks, where everyone was all doom and gloom. I said, hey, they're going to compete. This year, everyone's like, oh, they're going to win the Super Bowl. And I'm like, well, let's be realistic. And they got their ass kicked by Baltimore. They come back at home a very beatable Commanders team, or should be, and they end up taking it all the way down to the wire and escape with a last-second field goal. But hey, a win is a win.
A win is a win. It was definitely an ugly win. They had, I think it was 8 not turnovers. That'd be ridiculous. 8 penalties at home. And when you're playing at home, I get it. Sometimes the refs just miss a call or whatever, but 8 penalties at home should never happen. Like that mixed with
a staple of a Pete Carroll team.
Bend but don't break and be a little undisciplined
because they play loose, you know.
Yep. A little.
So I don't know how we address that. It is certainly frustrating to watch as a Seahawks fan. All the penalties, and also just like the defense. We have just not seen a clutch defense. How they gave up a long drive at the end of the game to the Commanders tie the game. Some long third down conversions. It must be fatigue. I think one thing that stood out to me recently as I'm watching a documentary about our 2013 Super Bowl team is their conditioning and their level of conditioning. And that, I think, is maybe a piece that's missing on our current defense is late in the game, especially for the last few years. Since the Legion of Boom has left, we've seen this defense give up a lot in the second half and in the fourth quarters. As we just can't shut the door on them because our defense is playing this like soft, cover 3, let them catch it in front of you and run for 5 yards and then chunk, and then they score. So I don't know, something that I've noticed and looked and wanted to put out there is maybe we're missing, maybe Jamal, maybe Witherspoon, whoever these leaders are on the defense need to get the team to run some extra gassers at the end of practice. I don't know.
I mean, there has to be an emphasis on possession downs when it comes to the defensive side of the football and getting off the field on possession downs, because when you can play well on first down and put a team at like 2nd and 9, you have to be able to try to keep them there at like 3rd and 7 then or something like that, because then that gives them a realistic chance to get off the field. But when it is just like 3rd and 2, or it's a long 3rd down, but then you give up the penalty on the back end for holding. I'm really rocking out in my headphones right now. I don't know if y'all can hear me.
I'm hearing this. Yeah,
okay.
Music just got real cranked up.
But yeah, I mean, you have to. When you're given the opportunity to get off the field, you have to be able to get off the field, and not every single time. But I think the Commanders had a way higher 3rd down conversion rate than we should ever be giving up at home last week, and that was a huge part of it.
On the other side of the ball, we've been critical of Geno Smith.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up, I think, at the end of the day with a decent performance, but still, to me, looks awfully flat. I mean, him and Tyler Lockett seem to have great chemistry. We did see some great catches by DK. So overall, an improvement, obviously. It only could go up after the Baltimore game. But still not the Geno we're necessarily used to seeing. I don't know how much lays on his shoulders compared to the offensive line. I know Abe Lucas will come back this next week. That should help things out. How do you feel about Geno?
Well, I mean, the thing about Geno is that he's going to be the Seahawks quarterback for the remainder of the year. He's not. He did enough
to keep his job and put to rest some of those questions.
And now we've already talked about the upcoming schedule. It starts to get really tough this week, going to Los Angeles. Still a winnable game, but that's a divisional game on the road, so you can't overlook it. And then it is the gauntlet of the Niners, the Cowboys in Dallas, the Niners again, the Eagles, and then a road game in Tennessee, and then the Steelers. And that's how you end your year. And so the opportunity for Geno to have some more adversity and to rise to the occasion is going to be there, and we hope that he can do it. The run game, with the addition of Abe Lucas, the offensive line getting healthier, guys who have been able to get more snaps and get more reps. Now we have added depth there, and we can cycle guys in, keep them fresh. I think the running game looked better. I think Ken Walker saw that Charbonnet was out snapping Ken Walker the past couple of weeks, and K9 looked good. He looked sharp. They were both running angry, and especially in that like third and fourth quarter when the Seahawks were able to put some drives together, they were ripping off chunk play after chunk play, and that was exciting to see. So I feel like the balance is there. When the balance is there, then that falls on Shane Waldron to be calling effective plays, keep the defense off balance. I think JSN is working his way into the offense more. And so to get him involved, you know, the Seahawks, they do all this window dressing. It's really fun to have 2 tight ends in the backfield and a running back. And all you're doing basically is running like a counter play, but it looks a little bit more exciting. So that stuff is still fun. I do want to see more play action on first down. I do want to see them when they are in kind of that, like, not the red zone, but I think coaches like to call it the strike zone, where you get like a chunk play and you end up on like the other team's 35-yard line or like 40-yard line. Get up to the ball and that's where you just like call a go route for DK. Maybe, you know, you put the ball into K9's belly real quick or something like that.
Or like Tyler Lockett. We definitely take a shot.
More explosive plays is what this offense needs.
Well, there's definitely reason for optimism after the win over the Commanders, but there's also a lot of still room for improvement, especially with the strength of schedule coming up. They're going to have to tighten it up. So 12s, buckle your seatbelts, prepare for anything, because nothing is going to be guaranteed this year. Never is.
Great way to put it.
Yeah. All right. I think that wraps us up. We're at the top of not top of the hour, but we are at an hour here for the show.
Perfect.
There it is, folks. Week 11.
One more shout out to Bobby. Thanks for joining us this week.
Appreciate you, Bobby, coming on. Thank you all for listening, tuning in. Be sure to set your lineups, and good luck out there.
Peace.